One of the nation's biggest and riskiest industries is dressing the American woman, an industry which is based upon the ever-shifting tastes of 50 million customers who spend some $10 billion a year.
Ever since the fashion industry first became, it has been an ever-changing and ever-growing, and also one of the most lucrative industries that there is. What clothes we decide to wear have become one of the most universal forms of self-expression that there is. What makes it what it is? Who supplies and who buys? Our shopping habits and popular demands have created trends and trend cycles, the fastest part of fashion. Brand new and bang for your buck. But when we really start to look at how the manufacturing machine of fashion keeps turning, how does it change how we buy?
Protests are continuing in Bangladesh after more than 120 workers were killed in a factory fire over the weekend. The fire broke out Saturday evening at a garment factory in the suburbs of the capital Dhaka, as its mostly women employees worked overtime to meet holiday rush orders.
With more knowledge of the consumer nowadays, the captivation of the fast fashion world has started to lose its lustre, and people are turning to a more ethical, sustainable and individual form of garment consuming, vintage and secondhand. But what do people really prefer? We decided to take to the Limerick public to find out.
I prefer fast fashion probably because it's just more convenient and you can find things you want easier.
I like buying clothes secondhand. I like to buy clothes that will last and can be repaired. Ideally, you'd like to be able to go somewhere where you can buy stuff is made by people who paid a living wage, union jobs and ethical material sourced, but it's really hard to do that. It's hard to know what's just marketing and what's real, so secondhand is the best option. At least you give them something like a second life, you give them something use that would otherwise be thrown away, and makes shopping a bit more fun as well, just hunting for stuff.
High street mainly because my job, I work in corporate, so I like to wear the blouses and the slacks type of thing, and also because I'm a sporty person, so because of my job is 9 to 5, I'd be in business casual clothes, and then on the weekends it's sports, so that would be my main go-to. But if it was leisure, vintage.
I usually prefer to shop vintage or secondhand. I started doing that a few years ago when my dad was throwing away some of his clothes, and I said, oh no, I'll take them. Yeah, so then from there I liked vintage more, I liked using the secondhand more. I thought it was better quality, it lasts longer. To be honest, I never thought about buying fast fashion, like where my clothes came from, anything, where they went after I used them. I never thought about that before, but then after social media I did. And then it kind of became a trend, the vintage clothes came into fashion again, and then that's when I started picking it up. I definitely find that fast fashion is a lot easier, and I really feel in society today, we actually need that, because when I finished college, I went straight into an office job. I didn't have office clothes, I didn't have formal clothes, and I wasn't going to wear the same clothes every day of the week in a new job. So I had to get a bulk order to have this set in my wardrobe. It was really handy, really fast, and I needed it at the time, and I didn't have any other option. The cons of vintage is that it is more of an upfront cost. The clothes last longer, in the long run, it's cheaper. But if you don't have that upfront cost, you just can't get it. And also it takes time to to look through things. You can go and shopping for a vintage clothes and you mightn't find anything for like weeks, like there mightn't be anything that you like. If you go fast fashion, you'll find something you want, or that's stylish, or that's in fashion, and you can get it really easily. I think it's good that it's rising, the vintage, the secondhand, the kind of like the options being there. I think it's good. I think it was very like small in Limerick before, like definitely before the pandemic. The charity shops weren't the same as what they were. There wasn't as much, there was no like Instagram or Facebook Marketplace kind of option. So it's good that the option is there now.
I would say I have always had an interest in vintage fashion. It suits my style and my vibe. I've always, liked the clothes that were worn in the 90s and the 60s, and I've always, waiting for them to come back in fashion and stuff, and, finding old clothes that were my mom's and stuff like that. I've always had an interest in that. And then the more sustainable side, I would say like 3-4 years ago I started learning more about it. Yeah, I would say that it's more self-directed by the students to reinforce sustainability and in our designs and in our work. Lots of students would do it themselves. They would care for their collections and their designs to be sustainable, so sourcing more sustainable fabrics and things like that. I think maybe because it's spoken about so freely now, so we'd have a higher knowledge and we care about, especially because the fashion industry is such a big polluter, and this is obviously what we want to do with our lives. You care that your career isn't going to have such a huge negative impact on the planet, so we would care a lot to consider that from the get-go.
So vintage fashion is said to be anything from 20 years old to almost 100 years old. Anything that goes over 100 years old is tagged as antique. So really the debate is 90s fashion vintage, because obviously the quality would have changed a lot in the late 90s into the noughties. Here at Wild Folk we check by era, so we like to shop by era. You can also pinpoint certain pieces of vintage by its look. Even 70s, for example, in the type of fabric that's used, and also with the details that are in the clothes. Particularly in Ireland, I would say that the conversation of sustainable fashion has really brought vintage fashion kind of into the limelight, and obviously people are more conscious of their carbon footprint and about the planet and about the hands that make our clothes. So I think that has really brought vintage fashion into the forefront, but also social media. Social media is really a burner there, Instagram and TikTok, for acknowledging small brands and vintage fashion. People are more aware of where their clothes are coming from and how they're produced and who makes their clothes. So I feel like social media, we have a love-hate relationship with it. Obviously when it comes to vintage fashion, and especially in Ireland, I feel we are starting to become more conscious of the brands that we support, where we spend our money, but also people buy into people, and I know that if someone resonates with an ethos of a brand, this obviously they have more a connection with that brand. And obviously vintage fashion in Ireland has become massive in the last 5+ years. So yeah, I would say social media is a big burner of that. Obviously people have become tired also of fast fashion and that kind of clone generation where everyone is like a little bit of a copy and paste look. So vintage fashion would be kind of, I suppose, become more popular because it gives people their personality, and obviously gives people an individual look, that they can be a little bit more creative with vintage fashion.
made there for them from top to shoe. And that's the problem, I think, with vintage. People kind of are a bit frightened of wearing it because of that reason. Yeah, I think that does need to be in place for people to kind of give them more ideas of styling, and also not to give people a hard time about fast fashion or buying from shops in general, because you do need your basics, but it's to start making a conscious decision to go in the right direction. Vintage to me is stuff from 20 years ago to 100 years ago, and you can look at that item and know what era it's from its like textures and prints and colours and patterns, and you can just, like for example, power shoulders scream 80s at you. It's nearly like a museum within itself. That's what I find with these shops, and even with the market. So it's like all these things coming together, and different flavours of people's personalities as well, because with clothing, the buyer or the person who owns the vintage store kind of picks stuff within their own personality as well, and that's what I think is really beautiful.
As in almost all businesses, supply and demand is the business. But there's no denying that eclectic and individuality in clothing has become more of a want in consumers, as mass production has made it more difficult to stand out. Isn't that the whole point of fashion in the first place? There's also so much more information on the major effects that the industry has had on the world and to the people in it. So what's in the future for the fashion of the past, as slowly but surely more people start to make the switch from fast-paced and trendy to slow, classic and still trendy?